Welcome to the Bold Life Movement podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Rich, and each week I bring you inspiring stories from real people to help you live a more passionate and intentional life. You'll learn how to up-level in everything from relationships, entrepreneurship and leadership, to spirituality, sexuality, and yes, even money. If you're interested in raising your game to be a better business owner, a better lover, and a happier, more fulfilled human, then you're in the right place. No more living on autopilot. You are just an episode away from a bolder, better, more fulfilling life. Welcome back. You're listening to episode number 57 with Bari Tessler. I sought out Bari as part of the financial mini-series that we're doing here on the Bold Life Movement podcast for season 2. So if you missed the first 2 episodes, definitely go back and check out my conversations with millionaire entrepreneur John Lee Dumas from Entrepreneur on Fire and financial planner for millennials Sophia Berra. This week, though, I'm chatting with financial therapist and author Bari Tessler. Bari also considers herself a mentor, coach, and mama-preneur. Her gentle, body-centered approach to money weaves together personal, couple, and creative entrepreneurial money teachings into one complete tapestry. Each year, she hosts hundreds of people in a global year-long money school, which integrates money healing, money practices, and what she calls money maps. Her work has actually been featured on Oprah.com, Inc.com, and a variety of other publications. And today I've invited Bari on the episode to talk about her book, The Art of Money, a life-changing guide to financial happiness. For more info about today's chat or to watch our full interview, head to theboldlifemovement.com/057. According to Bari, we all have a money story, no matter where we come from on the economic spectrum, what our ethnicity is, or where we received our education. Since Bari and I cover a lot of ground in today's chat, without further ado, please welcome her to the show. This is the one and only Bari Tessler. Welcome back to the Bold Life Movement. I'm really excited today because I have Bari Tessler with me. Hi, Bari.
Hi there. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm so excited. Honestly, I've been reading your book. For anyone who's not familiar, this is The Art of Money. And Bari is also the creator of a global year-long financial therapy program, also called The Art of Money. And Bari, I know that I sent it over to you when I reached out to you and your team, how I came across your work, but I want to share it with the audience as well.
Yeah, it's a great story.
It's so serendipitous to me. And I just feel like that's a really cool reason to have you on the show in and of itself. So briefly, I found Bari's work when I was at a local cafe recently, just having a night session, a glass of red wine, editing some podcast content. And I saw your website up on someone else's computer. And I actually thought it was that person's website because I didn't really get a good look at them. And when I got down to, got settled in my seat and was looking you up, it was just so timely because I'm doing these money-focused episodes. And once I started reading about who you were and what you're all about, I was like, I have to talk to her. So I reached out and here we are.
Yeah, thank you. It was a great note. I mean, it all goes to my team and I take a peek or they send me ones that they want me to see and we go to the person's site and your story was great. So,
well, thank you so much for taking the time.
You're welcome.
For people who aren't familiar with you, you're a financial therapist, that's what you call yourself, but you have a background in somatic psychology, and that plays a lot into your work. Can you just explain a little bit about what somatic psychology is?
Sure. So that's what I did in my 20s. I took myself to graduate school to become a therapist. At the age of 17, I asked my parents if I could go to therapy, and they said yes. So I also grew up dancing. And
me too.
You too. Okay. So if you're a dancer, anyone, I mean, I would, as a teenager, in order to understand my feelings and all the big feelings I was having, I would go into my room, play really loud music and dance anger and frustration and angst and sadness and all of it, and then I'd be able to come out of my room and then understand what I was feeling and then be able to articulate to my parents what was going on. So I had that experience. Then I asked my parents if I could go to therapy, but I wound up going to talk therapy because that's all they knew. And I wound up going to a man. which as a teenage girl, that just wasn't the right move. Like I was playing so many games with the male figure that I really needed a female therapist. But we learned that later, right? So I was on this road. And then one year after undergrad, I still had no idea what I was doing. I studied history, women's studies, African American studies. I took Japanese 2 summers in a row. I was figuring it out. And I went to Israel and I was running on a kibbutz. And all of a sudden, in a flash, I put together dance and therapy. And I thought I made up an entire field. And I get to Jerusalem and realize I didn't make up anything, that there's graduate programs in dance therapy, somatic psychology. And then I heard about Naropa University in Boulder, Colorado. And at the age of 24, I took myself to study at the school. It's so simple on some level. It just means your body and your mind are connected. And that talk therapy is great, can be great. But that for many of us, we may need other channels to be able to understand ourselves, express ourselves, and that so much information is in our bodies on a physical level, sensation level, emotional level, breath, and so on. And so even just by watching someone's gestures and body movement and where they hold themselves and then asking them, how do you feel right now in your body? What do you notice? Where are you holding? Just, I can't tell someone what if their shoulders are up high, I can't say what that means. That's not up to me. I would ask the person and say, what are you feeling right now in your shoulders, or what are you noticing? And so that's what I did in my 20s. I was steeped in training to be a therapist, understanding my own story, but not about money. This becoming a financial therapist really surprised me. So I was studying topics of sexuality, body, food, intimacy, grief, and death. That's what I was working on. I worked in hospice from the bereavement side, from overnight care. I led tons of authentic movement groups for women between 20 and 25 years old, helping them into early womanhood, adulthood, and on and on. And then my school loan came due, and that's when I freaked out. I just flipped out, and I looked back on my graduate school education, that we had studied every topic, under the sun, beyond the sun, that my undergrad, wait a second, what kind of training did I receive around money? And I just kept going back. And then I would come back to graduate school and be like, how did we skip this topic? Because if I'm going to work with couples, and this is on the surface the number one issue, that people get divorced, I didn't learn anything, or just I didn't even learn about how to do my own finances or set up my own bookkeeping system or start a private practice. So that was the moment when I either realized I'm running away, traveling the world forever as a nomad, which was a good idea or option, Right, it's good. And maybe you'll do it again, at a different phase in your life. Or I'm going to face this. And then I started learning every single thing that I could. And pretty early on, my husband, who names everything for me, we've been together 16 years. Day one, he said, your work is financial therapy. And, he's been my namer for everything. I used to call my work conscious bookkeeping. I called myself a financial therapist in the work financial therapy, but I titled it conscious bookkeeping. And then 6 years ago, my husband helped me rename it to the art of money. And so it's on a simple level. It's looking at your relationship to money on a practical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual level, and understanding your money story in this way. And then learning all the tools and practices, the language of money, receiving a financial education that most of us did not receive from grade school up in small increments and small little bite-sized chunks.
So how does your work as a somatic psychologist play into how you teach people to mend their money problems?
Okay. So I break my entire methodology into 3 phases: money healing, money practices, and money maps. This is the same framework that I've been doing for 16 years. I used to call it by different names, but this is the same framework. The first phase is more of the money healing work, and they all are connected. It's not like you're done with the money healing work and then you move on to setting up a bookkeeping practice. A bookkeeping system, and they all are integrated, and it's a lifelong practice, right? I'm gonna be updating and fine tuning my relationship to money every year, forever, right? So how do I bring in The somatic, it comes at the beginning. It was as soon as I realized that I needed to learn about money. And at first I thought I was the only one. I'm like, oh, I'm the only one with money issues, or that didn't receive a financial education, or that has some money shame. And then I started looking around at my community, and people from all different ethnic backgrounds and economic backgrounds and on were having issues around money and shame around money, and certainly strengths around money. But I started noticing we all have strengths and we all have challenges, and we all have a money story, no matter where on the economic spectrum we came from, our families that we were born into, and our income levels at this point. And so for me, if I was going to create a methodology to help myself and other people, it had to be filled with all the qualities that I love. And so it had to have deeper meaning. It had to have playfulness. It had to have creativity, all these things that I love. I was like, if I'm going to do this money thing, and so I started bringing all of that over. But the very first tool came directly from my somatic training, and it's the body check-in. And any tool that I give people to practice, it's so simple and it's so profound and it's life changing, but they are on the surface so simple. And a body check-in is simply just stopping and pausing before any money conversation, during the money conversation, in the heat of the moment, when you're so pissed or you're feeling so uncomfortable or just wanting to run out of the room, or on, right? There's an entire spectrum of emotions that comes up in life, and that comes up around money as well. And so I realized, like financial literacy, we didn't learn emotional literacy. That's the other track. Those are the two main tracks that I'm really teaching. There's more. And so the body check-in is just asking yourself to stop and pause and to check in on a physical level, what's going on in this moment. Even in your chair, like, are your shoulders up? Are they down? Are your legs crossed? Are they open? It can be so simple. On a sensation level, any tightening, any loose, any butterflies, any twitching, just notice. There's no right way to do a body check-in. On an emotional level, what's the emotion? Is there one? Are there a couple? Right? Is it anger? Is it sadness? Is it anxiety? Is it just discomfort and you can't figure it out? Is it numb? Is it wanting to check out? And, to the good ones, like the good feelings, like pleasure and enjoyment and hope.
Empowered.
Empowerment. Exactly. Like those are more qualities than actual emotions, but and it's a whole spectrum. And so all of these can come up when you're doing a body check-in. And then I always want to know where your breath is. So are you holding your breath? Are you breathing, but it's more shallow and it's up in your throat, or is it down in your chest or down in your belly? And that's it. That's a body check-in. And it can, again, super simple. And I have people do a body check-in when they're going to go online and look at their numbers, when they're going to go to the mailbox, and if you still get your bills or mail that way, right? When you're going to go to the mall, when you're going to go to the grocery store, when you're going to tell your clients your fees, when you are going to have a money conversation with your partner, with your spouse.
Yeah.
And the body check-in is really something you can do before, during, or after. And it's something that you practice and eventually becomes a habit. And all of a sudden, in the heat of the moment, you'll remember body check-in and you just stop and you do it. Or you walk out of the mall with a few bags and you do a body check-in then. So there's no right or wrong.
And what do you do with that information? Like, as you notice patterns, or as you notice that your breath is tight or your stomach is a little queasy, how does that affect your money decisions?
Okay. So this is a long journey. There's no quick fix. People come to me and I teach this work in a year-long program now. I cannot believe I used to teach it in 6 weeks or weekend workshops, but that's where I started. I started teaching 10-person groups in 6-week, over a 6-week period, over and over and over and over. And then we bumped it up to a 9-week class, and then I would teach it with 20 people, right? And now we're almost at 500 students. So I would teach it in very small groups over and over and over and over. So for me, this initial phase is bringing more awareness to your money story, your money patterns, which leads to deeper understanding, which eventually leads to change. So it's not like this is a quick fix. This is a tool, it's a practice to bring to daily life, to start to notice. It's like gathering information. On really, what is your money story? What are the strengths? What are the challenges? Where is there shame? and begin to see we all have this.
Yeah.
And we all have things we're doing really well about money. And that, even that, like naming what we do well, because it's the water we swim in. We don't even realize there are parts of our relationship to money we do really well. And so the body check-in is literally, it's a practice to start to do. And afterwards, some people may want to journal. Some people may want to go into nature, take it on a walk. We all have different modalities of how we process information and learn about ourselves,
Yeah.
right? Some of us dance or move. Some of us really journal. Some of us bring it into yoga. Some of us bring it into sitting meditation. I take it to my daily hikes. So I go into the woods almost every day and I hike. And that's where I bring that. And in the moment, yeah, it may be very uncomfortable. So it's not so simple. For some of us, this is the emotional literacy part of going back and how do we sit with our feelings? How do we understand them? How do we not try to change them and just be with them? You know, they say if you can actually just sit with the feeling, really feel it, it maybe lasts for 20 to 30 seconds, or, you know, if you fully feel it, maybe a minute, but like when you're fighting it, when you're punching at it, when you're trying to push it away, it's going to stay around for a long time. And yes, this brings up all sorts of discomfort. And how can we grow a capacity for uncomfortable things? But also, a lot of us, how do we grow our discomfort for pleasure too? So this is the whole field of somatic psychology. I always have a somatic trainer, therapist, as one of my teaching assistants in my
Oh,
year-long
wow.
program. I refer to somatic experiencing therapist over and over and over.
So it's a huge part of the practice.
It's a huge part of it. I know I'm going off on many tangents, but it is for me the foundation. When people say, what's the first practice before setting up a bookkeeping system and
Yeah.
starting to track your numbers, before starting to vision and set your goals and all of that, number one practice for me is gathering data information about your money story. And the best tool for that is this very simple body check-in.
Yeah. So one of the things that seems different about your work from other wealth consciousness books that I've read, and I don't know if you would categorize your book there, but
I wouldn't, but that's okay.
That's the language that I have, so that's
Yeah.
why I chose that. It feels like I'm only probably a third of the way through right now, and I'm trying not to rush it because I have a book club for it starting soon. But what I know, or what I feel like is coming, is actionable steps. Like once we've created the awareness, then you help us create a process and a system for pulling ourselves out of it, versus just the woo-woo wealth consciousness part, or just the systems without the emotional awareness. So how do those play together, and how do you lay that out?
Yeah. And that's why there are three phases. Because for me, it can't just be, I don't even call it law of attraction. I don't do that work, but I have a lot of dear colleagues who do, right?
Sure.
It's one piece. For me, it's incomplete if that's the only piece you're doing.
Mm.
It's one very good piece, right? And I definitely have a little bit of an issue with the law of attraction, but I think the original law of attraction work was great.
Mm.
And it's been turned into, something that I don't
A little
necessarily
campy.
fully agree with. Yeah. So for me, it has to integrate these three phases. And people would say, why don't you just jump to the practical first? And like, haven't we done enough therapy? And haven't we done enough like deep sea diving into understanding ourselves? And yeah, I used to ask that question. I don't anymore. I've been doing this work for 16 years, and then the decade before of being a therapist. And I can't skip this phase or make it go second. I just know that once we take some time to look, and there's so much urgency, because again, we we really need to be taught this material from
10 years
grade
ago.
school up. Well, whatever age we are. My community is 25 to 75 years old. 25 to 75-year-old
Yeah.
folks. Everyone on that spectrum is wishing that they learned it 10 years ago, or some 20, 30, right?
Yeah.
So there is an urgency of I need this now, or there's some fires to put out, or I made some mistakes and I have to deal with that, or a mess, all normal, right? And yet we do have to slow ourselves down, at least in the way that I teach it. I'm not saying like, don't hire a financial planner, accountant, or bookkeeper to get on your financial support team and help answer some immediate questions.
Yeah.
Right? I love collaborating with all of those folks. And you pick one at a time. You can't just add them all, usually right away. You add a bookkeeper in, then a year later, then maybe a financial planner, and on and on. But to come back to your question, I wanted to help people through understanding their money story first, and all that comes with that, everything from the awareness, understanding to there's a whole piece around forgiveness, yourself, others, like what's still keeping you awake at night or when you get on the treadmill, or what is it, that contract that you signed in your first marriage that you never
Mm.
read, the taxes that you haven't paid for a few years, because you're terrified to call the IRS and work out a payment plan with them. They love when you call them and work out a payment plan with them. They actually really do. They really do. They're going to be very nice about that. And on and on. All of those things that we think like, that's the shame. I'm bad and wrong and I don't know how to do this, or I'm smart in so many ways, but when it comes to money, I'm just stupid, or I'm not good at math, so I can't be good at money. And there's just layers of it. So I want us to do that work first, because when we show up at the door, like the practical part, my folks are just raring to go. They're
Yeah.
excited, they're interested. All of a sudden, they still may be scared or still may feel like I can never learn a bookkeeping system, or if I'm a creative person, it will be too boring for me. I thought, too boring, wasn't good at math growing up, and
Yeah.
on and on. And then someone sat me down, almost 20 years ago, and held my hand. I had dark chocolate with me. I had a box of tissue,
I had a
and I
piece before our interview. I thought of you.
you did. Okay, good, good, good. Yeah. I brought dark chocolate in from day one. Again, I was like, all right, when I sit down and do my bookkeeping, I'm gonna do my stuff. I'm gonna light my candles, make the space nice, put
Yeah.
flowers, have my dark chocolate,
Make
and
it
at night,
you.
a glass of wine, right? Okay. And that's not for everyone, but you have to just set it up so that it's your version of fun or
Hmm.
playful, or just so it's not drudgery, right? And then when you get into the second part, it's all about creating a practice. Again, we've yoga practices, we've meditation practices, I have a hiking practice.
Yeah.
And I wanted to bring in that concept to our relationship to money, because it's not like it's just we have to bring for me. I had to bring it into that framework.
Mm.
And so everyone's different. How are you going to craft your money practice? Is it every day for 5 minutes? For some people, that's what works. They
Yeah.
don't check their phone. They're not allowed to check their email or their Facebook until they take 5 minutes and they check their numbers, or they go online to look at their numbers. They have a money date with themselves,
Yeah.
right? It could be 15 minutes every few days. It could be 30 minutes twice a week. And a money date is really just sitting down with yourself and asking, what next step can I take with my relationship to money? And it could be doing a body check-in, and then it could be reaching out to a bookkeeping trainer who's going to train you on QuickBooks. Or
Mm.
maybe you're like my husband, he taught himself Mint by himself, iBank by himself. I can't do that. I needed someone to hold my hand.
Mm.
So it is having a money date with yourself, and the money dates can happen with your partners, and that's a whole other thing, right?
Oh yeah.
That's a whole other thing. And then there's a whole second phase. Like, so in the year-long program, we do 4 months on money healing. Then we do 4 months on money practices and setting up a practice, learning the language of money, learning what is a bookkeeping system. There are so many.
Yeah.
Just pick one. Who's going to teach you, or can you teach yourself, and starting to track your numbers. And then I have a whole piece about renaming, because again, this is the renaming of your categories in your bookkeeping system. Hits a few of my things. It can make it add some deeper meaning to it, and it can make it more playful. So two really small examples are renaming home, right? Oh, renaming rent or
Mm.
mortgage,
Mm.
right? And you
Yeah.
can't get so deep with that, but home is
Feels better.
nicer. Or in my book, I give the example of Love Shack. And I didn't come up with that, but I was in a room with financial planners, all in suits, almost 200. And I said, so give me a new name for rent or mortgage. And a woman stood up, newly married for the second time in her late 40s. And she was like, Love Shack. And I said, fabulous. So,
Yeah.
that's a way to make it more playful. And way to add deeper meaning is renaming a debt category. So instead of that damn debt, or what's the matter with me,
Mm.
or I can't get this money thing down, I'm stupid, or da, da, da. Yeah. Okay, well, what was this debt from? What phase of your life? What transition was going on? In a long life, if we have the honor of having one, there's going to be transitions.
Yeah.
And really, there's going to be the good and bad. The
Yeah, that could
beauty
be
and
your business building phase.
it could be a startup of your business. You left the
Yeah.
corporate world to start your own thing, right? You need cash. So
Yeah.
cash either comes from family money, savings, retirement, 0% credit card, or, like, where does it come from?
Yeah.
It could be a health crisis. It could be baby number one, baby number two. It could, I mean, there's right, these are real. And so renaming a debt, I had an older gentleman who was really skeptical about this renaming thing. And it's not for everyone, but for him, his wife had cancer and they
Mm.
had a lot of medical bills from it. And she made it through and she's
Oh, just
healthy
got chills.
now. And he renamed the category something about honoring her health and her life.
Yeah.
And it just shifted the energy of that dam or the it's all in the past. No, this is real life stuff. So renaming something can really honor what that time was. So that's that. And then just briefly, the third phase is all about like the visioning, which some people love to do, and some people get really stuck around and feel scared or they weren't allowed to vision or
Yeah.
dream as a kid. So we get stuck in all the different phases, or we are excited. Some people are like, I love the money healing work, and other people are like, get me through this. This is
Yeah, get
hard.
me to the systems.
Get me to the systems. I just want practical. And other people, they start the money healing and they're like, Barry, I'm going to learn a bookkeeping system side by side. And I say, great, go for it, do it. So the third phase is really all about what life phase you're in, family, on and on with your work. And then there's many, many parts of it of how do you make good money decisions? How do you create a money map based on three tiers, basic needs, comfortable lifestyle, and ultimate.
Mm.
There's a lot in there
Yeah,
of
hence
that.
you can create a full year-long program out of it.
Oh yeah,
I'm so
exactly.
curious to get through the book and just imagine how that plays out over the course of 12 months because I can empathize with people who come to you and are like, I want to be, finished with this in my best money self now.
Yeah.
So what do you say to people who are like, I've tried making a budget a million times before or I've tried working on my money mindset and that's
Yeah.
sort of their objection to
Yeah.
doing it again.
Yeah. Again, those are just pieces
Hmm.
of the full story or pieces, of the pie or part of the puzzle. Again, we're going to do good. We have good things around our relationship to money, and then we've missing pieces.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'll tell a little story or maybe two. Okay. One, a short one is just financial. She was an accountant in the corporate world and she knew how to do budgets. She did $1 million budgets for the company she worked for. She did
Mm.
them well, right? She'd been at her company for years. Whenever she would go to try to do them for herself, she would get stuck. She would overspend. She had a huge salary. She had a really nice salary, and she was still using her credit card and going into
Huh.
debt. So it was like, well, what's going on with her?
Yeah.
For her, she did have to back up a bit and understand more of her money story, the family, the ethnicity and lineage she came from, right? And then what was really key for her was the renaming of the categories. For some reason, that made it more meaningful for her. By going through all these exercises, or some of them, like in my year-long program, I don't say you have to do every step in order. Some people do, and then some
Yeah.
people jump around, right? And so for her, the renaming was huge. It got her connected. It got her into what was meaningful to her, her values. And then all of a sudden she could create a budget, which I prefer to rename of whatever you like, money map, map of intention. And then she was also able to just understand a lot of the psychology better of like where she was overspending and she had never really looked at her own numbers, like to
Right.
see how much she had to deal with and then to make choices. Most of us don't have unlimited cash flow. We have to make choices of when, where, priorities at any given time over a 6 month period and year long program.
One thing that I read early on in your story was that in the beginning you were doing bookkeeping for healers.
Yeah.
So, healers, other types of freelancers, people who don't necessarily have consistent income,
Yeah.
that you would get with a job. How do they go about the mapping and the what's the second phase?
Money
The money
practices.
practices. How do they go about that without that consistency to plan?
Yeah. So that was this little transition interim for me of going from, okay, I have the master's in psychology. I started learning Quicken, Excel, QuickBooks,
Yeah.
and then I started this bookkeeping business because I wasn't ready to be, well, I didn't want a private practice seeing clients 8 to 10 a day.
Mm.
And I was 28 to 32. I felt too young as
Yeah.
well. Second, my only other option was working in the mental health field again. And that didn't work either. Right? So this was this transition. I was working with therapists, coaches, artists, and contractors. No one has consistent cash flow.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is a huge group. I mean, this is the creative entrepreneur. That's another thing. I call myself a mama-preneur and a creative entrepreneur. And on the surface, yes, it seems like it would be so much easier just to have a job and get a consistent paycheck every 2 weeks, every month, and then you know exactly how much you have, and you can map that out and plan that out
You can
really
budget.
well. You could, and what's budgeting? Budgeting is planning,
Right.
right?
Forecasting.
So forecasting, planning, working, right. Yeah, but still, people still play games even with that.
Totally.
They spend more, on and on. And there's pros and cons to being a creative entrepreneur and pros and cons to working for someone else. I haven't worked for someone else in 20 years and don't foresee myself ever working for someone else, right?
Yeah, no, I
So
get
there's
it.
pros and cons in all of that. Yes, you have consistent cash flow. So for me, there's a few things. One is that I've been working, doing my work for 16 years, and sustainable cash flow and creating a business model to support that has been like one of my top goals at a few different, now the first three years, that's not going to happen for most people. And then it is like, how can you craft a business model so that you can get closer to sustainable cash flow? I'm just about to write an article. Well, it's happening right now with my co-writer. I create an entire outline framework and fill it all in, and then she goes in and writes it all, and then we go back and forth. And it is about the 4 different phases that I've gone through so far over my 16 years, and the 5th phase that's coming. Meaning, what are the business models? And what were the questions that I was asking that led me to the next one? So that's like a caveat or a side piece of this, is that as a creative entrepreneur, we need to be working towards sustainable cash flow and a sustainable business model. And what are the services or offerings that map that out? I'll give one little example of year 3. I was still a solo entrepreneur. The first 2 years I did bookkeeping. That was like my bread and butter. It was great. And then I moved fully into teaching my groups, my methodology in groups and small groups. Every 6 weeks I was teaching a new group, right?
In person?
It was all live for the first 7 years until I had my son right before my 40th birthday. Wow. And then I stopped doing anything live and went completely online and didn't leave my house for a few years for work. Right. And didn't leave, But the first few years it was teaching my groups, and cash flow is up and down and all around. And I was like trying to just move through a money ceiling, which is how much I was making each month. And did I have consistent income each month? And then I was looking towards how can I get consistent, sustainable income every 3 months, and eventually 6 months, and eventually a year. And that's why a year-long program too.
Gotcha.
It was also the content had matured.
Right.
The community, this work needs that.
Yeah.
But it was also side by side with, if I could get my money for a year, how amazing would that be? And then what kind of planning can you do around that?
Yeah.
Right. But so to come back to the money practices for creative entrepreneurs, first and foremost, you need a bookkeeping system, right? You need to be tracking. I love QuickBooks. I just do. That's what I was trained on. And most bookkeepers love it and accountants love it.
Yeah.
And you start tracking, and even for a few months, I don't want you to change anything. Like if you can move the judgment to the side, I just want you to start to see what are your patterns. After a while, you'll start to see, like, are you a seasonal business? Do you make a lot of money in the summer? Are you a therapist? And in August and December, it's usually pretty low with clients. Are you in real estate and you get a few windfalls a year? Now, how do you plan for that? But after a while, you start to see there's patterns. Okay. Instead of like, this is just crazy, Yes, it's harder in some ways, but there are going to be patterns to any business.
Totally.
And so what are your patterns? And then what can you start to shift? So, back in the day, it was still up and down and all around. And then I was like, okay, should I just have a bookkeeping business where I have bookkeepers underneath me? Will that do it? No, I don't want to do that. And then all of a sudden people started coming to me saying, I want to be in your team, Bari. I'm a bookkeeping trainer. And I work in the corporate world, but I'm doing this yoga training on the side. Or I'm getting my master's in psychology and I'm also studying to be a financial planner. I didn't have a team. And then people just kept coming. These women kept coming and I realized, oh, I need to create a team. And I worked out a percentage with them. And I was great at giving the free, inspiring initial talk and would do that anywhere and everywhere. And then they would come in and they would either do my group program or work with one of my trainers or financial coaches. Boom. That got us to a whole next level of revenue. And it also got us to sustainable income where I can then take home a certain amount each month. And then I did that for the next 3.5 years until I had my son. And then it all changed again, So you got to have a bookkeeping system in place. Either, I did my bookkeeping for years because before that I used to throw away my bank statements.
Well, and you learned how.
And I learned how, but people are terrified to learn how.
Yeah.
Some are, or they just throw it over to a bookkeeper. Now, I tracked for 12 years because I like the practice of it.
Yeah.
I learned so much about my numbers, my business, my patterns, cash flow, accounting, the language, on and on, that I loved it. And then after 12 years, I passed it on to my bookkeeper and she's been doing it for, 4 or 5 years now. And I'm so happy.
Yeah.
But you can't pass it on too soon. Because if you really can't read reports or you really don't know how, I say like,
it won't have the same effect.
It doesn't. And I've seen so many people get into problems or messes because they just didn't want to deal with it and threw their bookkeeping. When I was a bookkeeper, people threw their bookkeeping at me. They could care less. I had a master's in psychology. They just said, please do this. So there is that fine line of, do you want to learn it or parts of it or learn how to navigate the system a little bit and at least read your reports and definitely come in every month and have a money date with your bookkeeper if you're going to pass it on, right?
Yeah, because by offloading it or outsourcing it, yes, it's good that you are starting to track, but if you're not getting transparency on it weekly, monthly, or in some fashion, then it's still a form of avoidance.
It is. So it is. And just to complete that, the bookkeeping and the tracking and the looking at your patterns is a huge part of that. And then it moves into phase 3, which is just how do you price things? I have a whole article. I have 8 questions. It's not just one of it is do a body check-in. And what feels right.
Good. Yeah.
What feels good. But I don't want you to stop there because then that's actually too woo-woo for me. I never use that word, right? It's good information, but there are 7 other questions to ask. Who do you want to serve?
Yeah.
Do you want to serve higher income women and then have so many free slots? Or, or give some of your time to lower income organizations? There's or scholarships. There's so many ways, Then here's another question. What phase of your life are you in? And out of the 3 tiers, I have people map out what are their basic needs at this time, not 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when you're in college or whatever, Now, what are the expenses with that? Add it up. I want a number. And what does bottom line basic needs even mean to you? And then the second tier is what is comfortable lifestyle mean to you, feel like to you? What extra expenses would you add in? Is there massage in your bottom line, basic needs? Or would you never put massage in there? That's in second tier. In comfortable, everyone's so different.
Yeah.
And I don't tell you how to do this, but I do say, please sit down and take a half an hour, a few hours, and do this exercise. And then the third tier is ultimate. Some people can't even do ultimate yet until they meet the first tier, second tier. Other people, again, love division.
Yeah.
They're not going to do any of this if they
could do ultimate all day.
I'll do ultimate. Okay, you can do ultimate all day. Okay. And then you got to back it up a bit, And so this is just an exercise. And then it's what tier do you want to be living this year? And what's the reality? How close are you at that? Are you moving from basic needs to comfortable lifestyle and you're pretty close? So that's another thing that helps you. It's kind of like the reverse engineering of seeing what that is. And then that helps you map out, a business model
Yeah.
of how many clients, how many groups, and on and on. So these are just beginning because ultimately for us, it's a dance and we have
Hmm.
to learn how to dance. Some people, some budgets are like rigid diets. Some are, or a cleanse. So I write about a money cleanse in there. Sometimes we got to do food cleanses or money cleanses, or we choose to, right? So it's ultimately a dance of learning what the animal is
Yeah.
of your business model, and going from there. And it's every 3 or 4 years, I'm in a whole new business model phase. So,
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that a lot of people who are new to business don't necessarily realize, that like it's okay to see where you want to be, and it's okay to recognize that this is where you are now.
Yes.
And you'll evolve into that, and
Yeah.
you don't need to have any shame around that. Totally. Well, Barry, I have just a couple more questions, but before I get to those, I want to make sure everyone knows where to go to get access to your course and when they can sign up, and also to follow you and get your book.
Okay. So my website, which I love that my husband made for me.
Oh,
So it's my
wow.
name, baritessler.com, and it's Baritessler. If you go to my website, there's a whole book section on the website, and the book section describes the book and shows book selfies that people from all over the world have taken and shared. We have a book club. You can sign up to get the book club PDF. It's like a list of questions and how to
Which I've
set one
done.
up. Oh, yay. Okay, good. And then you can link to the book. You can get it everywhere: Amazon, online. If you're international, Book Depository, Barnes and Noble. And then locally in the US and Canada, lots of independent bookstores and Barnes and Noble. My year-long program opens every October, November for the early bird registration, usually for about 10 days. And then in January, we open it up. But if you join in the early bird, you get access to our private member area, you get
Mm.
access to my entire library right away. There's a lot of content and you have to pace yourself, right? And then there's
Yes.
an order, there's a framework and a step by step, and a monthly mission and weekly love notes, and me and 5 TAs, 5 teaching assistants every
Oh, wow.
year. And each year the community grows a little bit. So that's my main gig. That's my main thing, the year-long program and my book at this point.
Awesome. That's so awesome. Yeah, I'm loving the book so much, and I'm really excited to kick off the book club. I think it's such an
Yay.
important topic. So,
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. When I started seeing those popping up, it's that's been a dream come true.
I
Like,
can't even imagine.
yeah, thank you. So
Yeah.
please take a picture of your book club and send
Oh,
it
I
to me.
will, for
Okay,
sure.
good.
Yeah, I've already
Good.
posted a picture of me with the book, which I'll
Oh, good.
more to come as
Okay.
soon as this episode goes live, for sure.
Sounds good.
Well, the last couple questions I ask at the end of every episode,
Okay.
and I feel like I have a good understanding of this, but I want to know, what is your why for the business model that you have, the type of work that you do, what drives you?
These big questions can be hard for me because I'm such a everything comes from within and then it gets created. So it's like a deep within yearning, deep within questions, deep within. And that's how I create business models. Everything is like based on my values, priorities, and goals at that phase in my life, right? So,
Yeah.
being a mom at 40, changing everything around that. Some of my biggest values are my family, number one, health, and being as generous as I possibly can with my content. So, I mean, some of the deeper whys are what I've already shared,
Exactly.
this emotional literacy track that so many of us did not learn growing up, or we are taught to not listen to our bodies, or we are taught to squash it or ignore it, override it. So for me, the somatic teachings are huge. And then this doorway of money into awareness, understanding, and change into just it's bringing mindfulness into daily living,
Mm.
and this is my doorway, and doing work that I love, that supports my family, that supports my team, that two of the deeper things are how I do philanthropy. I'm going to be creating an article about that soon. I give to a lot of Kickstarters. I've been making sure that my interview series and my guest teachers, that they are the community is more and more diverse, and that's really, really, really important to me and has been for years. So that's a little
Very
bit.
cool. Yeah, no, I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. And then I want to know what your definition of a bold life means, or what does that look like to you?
I think it's similar to what I've already, mentioned and named. Is a bold life is loving strongly,
Mm,
fiercely, and in creating a family and work and a community that you love, and both being comfortable and taking risks.
yeah. Getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, which we talked about earlier.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
also, creating sustainable things that will nurture you to, at different phases of your life, but also stepping out of that comfort zone and taking risks in different ways. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Bari, well, thank you so much. Again, for anyone who hasn't yet got a copy, The Art of Money by Bari Tessler. I'll definitely have links up to all of this in the show notes. It was so nice getting to know you, and I can't wait to share your mission and your message with the audience.
Kimberly, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you so much to Bari for coming on today's show. Again, if you'd like to get more information about Bari's book or her year-long program, head to theboldlifemovement.com/057. And since there's a good chance you know someone in your life who could benefit from a little bit of money story healing, share this episode out with them, and if you can, leave me a review on iTunes. The more reviews, the better. I love getting this information out to you and to all your friends and family. So again, thank you so much for spending your time with me this week, and I will catch you all next week.